We are the first religion, the most authentic one. It's the only book that was given in front of millions of witnesses. No other religion started with a public event. All of them started with the story of one individual who came and made up a story. Nobody ever witnessed that. And when you review their books, you find that it's full of human errors. Now, if you're clever enough, you don't have to be a genius, but if you're clever enough, after reading 2 or 3 pages from those books, you'll find human errors. So some of these non-Jews, they're clever. They read it. They want to be Christians, but they see there's a lot of human errors. So they write to me. It never worked out in my head. All my life I've been trying to be a Christian, but every time I was reading it, I saw that it cannot be God wrote it because it's full of mistakes that little children won't even do, right? And then, same thing by Islam. You read, you see some human errors over there. So always the answer is going to be, you're not allowed to ask questions. You have to believe. But in our Torah, the great part about it, that the Torah not only allows to ask questions, the Torah encourages a person to ask questions. The entire Talmud, if you ever saw a page of a Talmud, the entire Talmud is thousands of questions and thousands of answers. Any kind of question that a person may thought about, it's in the Gemara, in the Talmud. Anything. Who is God? What was here before him? What's going to be here after him? Who made the world? How he made the world? Why in 7 days? What's the difference between Jews and the rest of the world? What's the combination of body and soul? So many things. The free choice. How does it work? What's the difference between us and the animals? If the difference is the divine soul and we are choosing to do good or bad and we subject to our actions, and we either get rewarded or punished, which is different than the animals that lives by instincts. In that case, how, if God knows the future, we're still able to choose? If we already saw our end, basically it limits our choices. If you already saw the end of the film, the director, he wrote the script. He's about to direct the movie. He's the only one who stands on the stage. Well, the actor's reading it, but he's the only one who knows how it's going to look, the film. Nobody knows until they see the film. He's the one, before he even started to work, he already know how it's going to look. So if you already knew me, the actor in the film, can I do other than his knowledge? It's not possible. I have to do according to his plan. That's a very problematic point. It's called the question of the free choice. So all these questions, it's all mentioned in the Talmud. Judaism are not running for any question. You're allowed to ask, how can it be that the miracle happened? Do you really believe it? Prove to me that it really happened. How do we know certain things? If we wouldn't have all these questions, it wouldn't be such a solid religion. Because when you're not allowed to ask questions, some people would still believe, some people would not want to believe. By us, it's not about believing. Actually, the believe part in the Torah, if you know a little bit the Tanakh, maybe just leave the door open, like these people can come in and out. So in the Tanakh, it doesn't really say that we have to believe in God. There's 24 books of Judaism. There's only one place that the word to believe in God mentioned, believe it or not. In the Torah, in the prophets, in the kings, in all the 24 books of the Tanakh, everywhere it refers to us as the followers of the Creator of the world, it says, you should know I'm your God. You should know me. You should know I'm the king. You should know I'm the Creator. You should know I'm watching you every second. You should know I will judge you for good and for bad based on your actions. All the nations of the world should know the hand of God. That I gave you the heart and the knowledge to know me. I took you out of Egypt for the whole world to know I'm your God. It's always using the word to know. Never that they should believe. Why? Believing, it's a very low level. It's not even knowledge. You don't have if somebody comes to me and give me $1 million check and say, give me your diamond ring. It's a nice check, yes. It looks like a company check. I won't give him the diamond, even though there's 10-20% chance that the check is good. Right? On top of my head, there's 20% chance it's good. But I won't give it to him because I don't know who he is. But if I know him 50 years, and I got 5,000 checks from him and all of them are perfect, then I know there's no problem with this person. Even if he want to lie, he can't. Even if he want to steal, it's not his nature. There are people like that, believe it or not. So after 5,000 transactions, there's a 99% chance that the check is good. So the more you know him, the more you learn about him, the more you are experienced with him, the more confidence you have to put your life in his hands. Just like in the army. If there's a new commander, the soldiers are shaking. But if as a 30 years you're with him, you know everything, you know you can rely on him, you know when he says something, he always performs. You have security. This is like everything in life. So Hashem doesn't tell the Jews, believe in me. Because he knows, believing it's a very low level. So he always refers to us, you should know. But yet at the same time, one time it is mentioned to believe in me. But when it says you have to believe in me, it first says you have to know and believe and understand. 3 words. This is the right order. You should know and believe and understand. Which means if there is no knowledge about God, you don't know 100% that he exists and runs the worlds and watch over you, there is no point of talking about believing. You don't know who you're dealing with. You want to believe in him? How do you believe in something you don't know who he is? You first have to know who he is. The more you know him, the higher the level of faith you have in him. The less you know him, the lower the level of faith. If you don't ever know, if there's no way to know in the entire religion, like Christianity, not one proof, nothing, not one prophecy in the entire book, not one prophecy, nothing to prove that the book is divine. It's all based on stories, parts of history. If they happen or not, nobody knows. You have to believe. You have to believe there was JC, even though all the odds indicating that he never existed. Why? Because the story of him and the virgin and all that appears in other cultures which are older than Christianity. So it's very high possibility that somebody copied it from another fairy tale that was mentioned by another cult, and based on that, the whole story of Christianity. There's no indication he ever existed. Why am I saying what I say? Because Christianity really started between 70 and 300 years after he died. Assuming he did live, assuming he lived, the people who started to write the stories about his life, what we call the evangelists, they started to write the books of Christianity between 70 to 300 years after he died, which means none of them ever saw his face. None of them has any proof that he ever lived. It's one story after the other. Nobody can prove if he really said what he said. That's it. So based on that, almost 2 billion people dedicating their life to a belief that there's not even 1% chance it really happens. Not one witness to one of his stories. It's all stories. Nobody ever saw that it really happened. And one more thing is, when you begin to review the book, the more you find human errors, the more you know God never gave it. Plus, there's another problem. Since the Christians and the Muslims came and they say, we are not challenging Judaism. We are the witnesses to prove that God gave the Torah to the Jews. They call it the Old Testament. Same thing the Muslim, they believe in the Torah. Half of the Quran is from the Torah. Ibrahim, Sarah, all the stories from the Torah appears in the Quran. They never tried to say God never gave the Torah to the Jews. The opposite. In the Quran, in many, many places, it describes Mount Sinai, how the Jews got the Torah from God, how he took us out of Egypt, how Pharaoh was a wicked king. There's a lot of things that is copied from the Torah. So they adopted the Torah as a divine book because they know you cannot deny it. It's a big public event. You cannot deny such an event. Same thing the Christians. So what did they say? That God gave another book, which makes sense. Maybe God decided to give part 2. The only problem is part 2 have to comply with part 1, right? If you make a movie and you want to do movie XYZ, number 1. Then part 2, 2 years later you saw it was a bestseller. You want to do part 2. Part 2 has to continue where part 1 ends. Has to be the same actor, the same name, the same detail, the same house, the same neighborhood. Imagine now it's a complete different movie and they call it part 2. There's no connection. Or even worse, that in part 1 his wife was Sarah, and part 2 now his wife is Rachel, a different woman. Same story. where the story ends. Now all of a sudden she was blonde, now a black hair woman. She's his wife. What would you say? It's definitely not the same writer that wrote those two films. It's a mistake, something in editing. Something went wrong in the studio. This is exactly how the New Testament is. It says Jacob went to Egypt with 70 people. All of a sudden in the New Testament, he went to Egypt with 75 people. What God doesn't remember was 70 or 75. How can he that? This is his nation. He took them out of, he got them to Egypt and he took them out of Egypt. How 1300 years later he gives part 2, which completely doesn't match part 1. Oh, it says that the cave of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, it's in the city of Shechem, Nablus. And every fool knows it's in Hebron. This is a kindergarten errors, not some, you don't have to be a genius, a little kid knows it. Ask any 6-year-old kid in yeshiva today. Tell me, little cutie, where is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is buried? Every kid would answer, Me'arat HaMachpelah. And you ask him, where is it? They all know it's Hebron, because it's mentioned a few times in the Torah. That Abraham bought it from Ephron Achiti, he buried Sarah over there. The Torah says in Hebron. But according to them, it's in Nablus. It's a different city, Shechem. What confused them? They read another story about Joseph. Joseph is buried in Shechem. So the one who faked that New Testament wasn't exactly a genius in Torah. The details got mixed. And he made human errors. That's it. You don't have to be a genius to know not to waste a minute on this book. Not a minute. But yet, it's much easier for Christians to follow their faith and religion than Jews. Reality-wise, Jews giving me much harder time than the Goyim. When I speak to the Goyim 5-10 minutes, right away, I'm not lying, right away I say, so listen, if I want to convert, how do I do it? 10 minutes of conversation in the airport, on the plane. I was sitting one time in a plane, a wife of one of the biggest priests in America, in the South. She said that her husband have more than 500,000 followers. I don't remember the name. It was a few years ago. She was sitting next to me in a plane. An older woman, maybe 65, 70. The last 20, 30 minutes of the flight, just when we were about to land, I felt a little bit confidence. I gave her the whole thing. And she was like the shock of her life. Like you see that she couldn't say a word. Like you saw on her face, she was so shocked. Like her face left no mistake, no place for mistake. She realized all my life was mistake. We follow this book, we give our life for it. They mean well, they search for God, they want to do good things, but they chose the wrong way, the wrong direction. You want to get from here to Manhattan, but you took the other direction. You mean well, you're on the way to the appointment, you're on the way to save someone's life, but you went to Eastern Long Island instead of to Manhattan. What did it help you that you meant well? You did not reach your destination.